Regular meeting of the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Commission on February 5th, 2020. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, is available at the front of the chambers with the clerk. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. If you parked in the parking lot across the street to the north, the gate is open and no parking coupons are necessary today. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, the commissioners and the staff, cellular telephone usage is not permitted in these chambers during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. Please note the Planning Commission action today is final on the following items. 1.2B, Special Permit 19061, and 4.2, Administrative Amendment 19070. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to either the City Council or the County Board. Before we get started here today, wanted to bring up Director David Carey for a little announcement regarding some 2015 comprehensive planning and activity that will be taking place tomorrow at the Pinnacle Bank Arena that you're all invited to.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners, for a little bit of time. Just wanted to make an announcement that we have kicked off our 2050 comprehensive plan update process. We're calling it Plan Forward 2050. You can find a lot of information on our website at planforward2050.com. We are having our first public meeting at Pinnacle Bank Arena tomorrow, Thursday, from 5 until 7 p.m. There will be a more formal presentation at 5:30 to provide some information, and then there will be open house activities besides that throughout the time period we're there. So we'd like to have as many people from the public to attend, and thank you for the time to announce that.
All right. Thank you, Director. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held January 22nd, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved, Campbell. Second, Chair.
Jerry?
Okay, Albadre?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Becky? Yes.
Yes.
Motion carried, 8-0.
The next item of business is the consent agenda. Please note that item 1.1, change of zone 06063B, is being removed from the consent agenda for a separate public hearing and will be called as item 3.1 on today's agenda. All remaining items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will go ahead and ask Jerry to read all of the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items have been read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and is scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted on in total with a motion for approval. And once again, we're pulling off of consent agenda change of zone 06063B. Jerry, will you please call the other items on the consent agenda?
Yes, thank you. Item 1.2 is change of zone 19034 from AG Agricultural District to P Public Use District, from AG Agricultural District and P Public Use District to R3 Residential District and O3 Office District on property generally located at South 84th and Rokeby Road. Item 1.2B is special permit 19061 to allow for a community unit plan for 168 dwelling units with waivers to allow sewer to flow opposite street grades, lot width, block length, and lot lines not radial to the right-of-way on property generally located at South 84th and Rokeby Road. Again, this is final action on this special permit unless appealed within 14 days to the City Council. And the associated use permit is 19023 to allow up to 45,000 square feet of office space or up to 128 dwelling units in the O3 Office Park District with waivers to height and setbacks on property generally located at South 84th and Rokeby Road. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
Seeing none.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting a site on one of these sites, or this site, I guess?
Also nothing.
Okay. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on any of these three items? If so, please stand and state your desire to pull these from the consent for public hearing.
All right, I don't see anyone. Jerry? Or no, well, entertain a motion, sorry.
I would move approval of change of zone 1034. Can I do all three?
Yes.
And special permit 19061 and use permit 19023.
Second.
Second, Finnegan. Jerry?
Okay. Baudre?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Beckius?
Yes.
Motion carried, 8-0.
There are no requests for deferral, so we'll now proceed to public hearing. The staff will make a brief presentation. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, and then followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If, during your testimony, you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and/or included as part of the public record, please provide that information to the clerk for distribution. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The timer will go off after 4 minutes. Then you will have 1 minute to wrap up your testimony. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the Commission votes to defer action or to continue the public hearing. At this point, as acting chair, I'd like to appoint Commissioner Joy to serve as temporary chair, as both Commissioner Scheer and myself have declared conflicts of interest on item 3.1, change of zone 06063B, and will recuse ourselves for this portion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, would you please call the first public hearing item?
Yes. Item 3.1 is change of zone 06063B to adjust the zoning line between the B2 Planned Neighborhood Business District and R3 Residential District Planned Unit Development Districts, convert office and commercial lots to attached single-family lots, and approval of a development plan which proposes modifications to the zoning and subdivision ordinances on property generally located at 84th and Adams Street. Staff recommendation is conditional approval. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed?
Seeing none?
Okay. Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting the site?
Seeing none again.
Rachel Jones, planning staff. This is a proposed amendment to the North 40 Plaza PUD, which is located at North 84th Street and Adams Street. So here we have Adams Street on the north and 84th Street on the east. This is a proposal to convert several office and commercial lots to residential, and they are showing a total of 28 new single-family attached units. So the three areas of change, we have this area and this area west of North 82nd Street, which are designated for office uses, currently going to single-family attached residential, and also this area south of Regent Drive, currently zoned B2 PUD, that would also be changed to single-family attached and be located on a new cul-de-sac. So we have received correspondence from some of the neighbors, in particular the owner at 8224 One Mill Drive, regarding the pedestrian easement location. And this is a long block, so a connection was required from the new proposed cul-de-sac. And it was originally shown connecting Regent Place with Windmill Drive to the south, as shown here in blue. And so based on the owner's opposition, who lives here, and several other neighbors, the pedestrian easement will be relocated to run east, connecting to North 83rd Street, south of the Jensen Tire. So that change is shown here in orange, so it would come down and then east like this. And the planning department, its position is that this is a reasonable compromise, and this would move it further from her property while still preserving a connection. This is another exhibit created by the applicant that shows the revised easement location, and it's showing just over 30 feet from her property line to the new sidewalk. And there was some discussion about moving it further north on the north side of Jensen Tire, but that would cause the connection to serve less of a purpose for the new cul-de-sac residents. We anticipate that there will be some desire to head south and west from the cul-de-sac because there's a school located to the southwest. And so we had submitted a memo to the Planning Commission revising the conditions for the change, which I think you all have received. And the Watershed Management Division and the applicant both believe that that revised location is feasible based on the grading. So with that, I'll take any questions you have.
Are these amendments that we would need to approve? Or have they just been changed with the staff report?
They are just being changed in the staff report is how they were submitted.
So they would now be part of the project?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? No?
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks.
thank you. Testimony from the applicant, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Luke Summers. I'm here on behalf of the Clark Anderson Partners. We are working with the applicant Apples Way. I've brought an exhibit as well here showing the area that we're proposing these changes. You can see that it was originally it was designed to be commercial, but we've gotten some interest in some residential development there that they'd like to actually take place this spring and summer if we can get everything approved. So originally it was going to be commercial, and it's been set that way and vacant for 10 or 15 years, I believe. And so with this change, with this interest, we're looking to request a change of zone to change that commercial area to residential. With that, the city planning department has asked us to clean up the zoning boundary that was originally set with the original PUD, just to show what the defined uses really are going to be. So there's a couple areas on the north and on the south that were originally commercial, that are originally residential, that are going to be reverting to commercial. One is an area that was actually part of this commercial lot, and then a little bit of the commercial private drive there, and then here it's part of the detention pond that was originally set to be a lot, but then some of the detention moved around and became part of the detention pond. So there's no longer going to be a single-family home there. So we're proposing attached single-family dwellings here to act as kind of a buffer between the existing residential and the commercial area. And then we had originally proposed the pedestrian crossing here, expecting the traffic would want to go south and west. But we are willing to change that and take it over to the east if that will make things more agreeable for the neighbors. So we are agreeable to that change, and like I said, we've got somebody who thinks they're ready to develop it, and so we would like to reach some sort of an agreement this afternoon on what course we should be taking. So, any questions?
Okay, thank you. Any big questions for Mr. Summers? No? Okay, thank you. Now we'd be calling testimony in support of this application. Seeing none, let's look at testimony in opposition of this application. Okay, excuse me. Thank you.
I've never done this, so
Take your time.
I
It's okay.
think I agree with the zoning change. We live at 8224.
And your name?
Brittany Banders.
Okay, did you get
So-
the address, Jerry?
Yes.
So
Okay,
we
excellent.
agree with the zoning changes, I know. What we're in opposition to is where the sidewalk is going to be placed, or where they're proposing. I know they helped us out by not having it go up along the east side of our house, which was huge for us. But I think the problem that we still have with where it's at is it's still within our backyard area. I think for us, we have young children and stuff, we don't want the traffic. We don't want to feel like there's people walking, within our back area where we spend a lot of time. Where they're proposing it, we still feel is very close to our backyard. We were also told that there was possibility they could put it between the two businesses, which we think does make a lot more sense. It doesn't hinder any residents' privacy. Our end lot, we thought we picked that lot because it had more privacy to it. And now we feel like that's kind of being taken away. So we feel that putting it between the two businesses is not that much of a difference lengthwise. So they're saying it doesn't serve as a purpose, but really it's on the other side of the building. People can still walk over to North 83rd and down. So to us, we don't feel it's that big of a change, and we feel between us and our neighbors, who we have spoke with, and I think some have sent in their feelings on it. We like kind of having more of a quiet neighborhood, and then this still allows people to be able to come out and around with our neighborhood, but not disrupt any of the neighbors' backyards and those type of things. So that is our feeling on it. So,
Okay. Okay, question?
Is your yard fenced?
no.
Okay.
Okay.
And on that topic too, I mean, that was another thing, was we were not wanting to have to do that.
Okay.
It'll make our yard feel a lot smaller. And again, with little children, it's kind of nice to have the openness. And when it was commercial, we didn't really worry because we figured, we were told possibly a parking lot or a building, that's completely different. Now that there's people that can possibly be walking up back there, to us too, theft, things like that. We worry about that with people being able to walk freely right behind our house. So,
Do you have any concern with the B2 change? The change from R3 to B2 to the south of you?
remind me what that was again.
B2 is a business zoning and R3 is residential, and it would be directly south of your lot,
Yes, so
towards the detention pond.
so east of our lot. right?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Changing that zoning, are we against that? No.
Okay.
Because we've been told, we panicked at first, we thought there was something going in there when we received stuff in the mail, and we're like, and now that we've been told there, it's not buildable, so we're not worried about anything going in there.
Okay, good question. Anything else? Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Do we have any additional testimony in opposition? Okay, staff questions? You want to start?
No,
Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Rachel, would you show us on the map where, between the two businesses where the neighbors are proposing?
Right. So they're proposing a third alternative that would be located right here.
Okay, thank you.
And then show that on the other plan, the one where it's developed with the lots, showing it, if you don't mind. Thank you. That'd be great.
So it would be
So
somewhere
that's right
around
there?
here. Yes.
Would it eliminate a lot if that were to be done? A residential lot?
It could. That would be something the applicant would have to look at and see.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay. Applicant rebuttal, please.
We have taken a look at that, the possibility of putting it between those two businesses. We don't own either of those properties anymore. They're both owned by other entities. There's no existing easement for pedestrian access across there. At one time, before the north one was platted, there was an access easement with the expectation this was going to be commercial and you'd have a driveway or something through there, but that has been vacated and is no longer part of that parcel. So it would take some property easement acquisition to make that happen, and it also doesn't flow well with our current layout. With the townhomes here, we'd have to bring it somewhere south here, have a jog to the north, and then bring it across somewhere, and it just does not flow well with, we'd have to look at, can we rearrange lots somehow to make it work, and they are very tight as it is. That's why we've requested a couple waivers for dimensions and stuff for it. So it would be very challenging to make that option work. There will be, if we do this route, we will have some additional grading, maybe a short retaining wall or something to make sure that we can make that work. But it would also be on the opposite side of an existing drainage way. There's a drainage way here in this outlot H that connects this area to the west with this detention area. So it's a fairly significant drainage way across there. That would also help separate this property from that sidewalk.
And what was how far is would the path go between that property and the property to the south?
So the closest point here was 30 feet, and I've got another exhibit here. So this property corner right here would be approximately 30 feet from the trail at its closest point.
And can you point out on that map the drainage way that you
Yes,
were talking?
it's right here. There's a drainage way right through here that flows into this pond.
Thank you.
Would you be willing to do some landscaping on that corner to separate for the homeowner?
We could certainly talk to the developer about that. With the drainage, I mean, there's already some landscaping, but I could talk with the developer about that.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have a question. How about, would you be able to entertain between 45 and 46 and then take it down to the sidewalk?
Between 45 and 46, those are meant to be a shared lot line. It'd have to go between 46 and 47. We have not looked at that option. That would lengthen it even more. One of the reasons we specifically looked at this is because there's already storm sewer and sanitary that are going to be through this outlot, which is not, so it's not a buildable area. We're going to have a wider area to be able to get that path through. All of these, it's approximately 10 feet at the narrowest spot. I mean, they're almost right, they're right on the setback line. So if we're going to put in a pedestrian way or an easement through between any of those buildings, we're going to have to start moving buildings around to make it fit. Whereas here, we've got an outlot that we would be putting it in.
Okay. Other questions?
Well, just so to clarify, so if that's an outlot, it's not going to be built on, there's a chance that even if you moved the official sidewalk up, people are still going to naturally walk through there because it's not built.
Yeah.
And so it'll become, I mean, if that's where the people are going to walk, because they go the shortest route.
Right, and it's going to be graded for drainage anyway, so it's going to be a gentler slope through there. We're hoping to fit probably some daylight lots on there so that it's not the full basement, but I don't think we have quite the grade to make them walkouts. So it is going to be elevated a little bit as well, and that's going to be the overflow channel from the cul-de-sac down, so it's going to be graded a little more gently through there as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I would move we close the public hearing.
Second.
We've made a motion to.
Edgerton.
Sorry.
Edgerton?
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
sorry about
That's
that.
okay.
We have made a motion to close the public hearing with a second. Let's have a vote on that, please, Jerry.
Okay, Albadre?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
I would make a motion to approve this plan, and would request that the developer do some landscaping on the corner to give the homeowners a little separation from the path.
I'll second. Edgerton.
Okay, we've had a motion with a second to accept the revisions that we've heard today and then add landscaping. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
Hold on.
I have a feeling that the landscaping may be a challenge for us to implement, given that the developer is different than the
Right,
owner.
that's why I'm requesting that the developer do it, not
As a suggestion,
as a
not part of the
suggestion.
motion.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
And with the detention area,
Okay.
there's plantings such as bald cypress and such that would work very well because they'll take either a wet or a dry climate. So there's means to do some separation for the homeowners.
Perfect. Okay.
And basically, it'd only take about 3 plants.
I will vote to approve this. The conditions of approval have met with the standards, and I think that we have come up with a good compromise that works with regard to the path through the outlot.
I would agree.
I would echo and also state, I understand where the neighbors are coming from, but Cindy also made a great point. The outlot is going to be an area where people would be utilizing, so might as well make sure that we get that taken care of.
Okay. And I'll be supporting the motion also. I think that some good points have been made, some compromises have been made, and my fellow commissioners' comments I agree with also. Let's call a vote.
Okay, this is for the conditional approval of change of zone 06063B with the added suggestion of Commissioner Campbell to make a suggestion to the developer to add landscaping. Okay, Albadre?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Okay. We'll give just a second for Commissioner Beckius to come back and chair for us as we move into public hearing and action items. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next public hearing item is item 4.1, use permit 15E, to allow for an early childhood care facility for up to 266 children and 25 staff on property generally located at South 27th and Old Cheney Road. Staff recommendation is for conditional approval. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed?
Seeing none.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting the site?
Also, nothing.
Okay.
Desi?
Thank you, Planning Commissioners. Desi Redmond, Planning Staff. This use permit is located at the northwest corner of Old Cheney and South 27th Street. Specifically, we're talking about lot number 4 that is outlined here. This is a request for an amendment to a use permit to increase the approved commercial square footage on Lot 4 from 14,400 square feet to 16,500 square feet to build an early childhood daycare facility for approximately 266 children and 25 staff. The overall commercial footage within the entire use boundary will remain the same, as that is not increasing. So that is approximately 101,900 square feet. Lot 4 is about 1.1 acres. It's mostly in the O3 zoning district. It is the last vacant lot within this use permit. The proposal is basically shifting some square footage from Lot 7, where there is currently a Dunkin' Donuts, to Lot 4. And so again, the overall square footage remains the same. Access can be taken into the site off of South 27th Street in a couple places, Old Cheney Road, and then also North Jameson and Canterbury Lane. Within the total use permit, there are approximately 350 parking stalls, which exceeds the 297 parking stalls that are required. Originally, LTU did have some concerns about the number of peak trips that were being generated by this proposal, and also with some of the stacking with the drop-offs. However, the applicant provided updated numbers on trips and times based on another existing facility. There's the franchise has another facility that is already built, and so they provided some numbers based on that sized facility. They also showed compliance with the stacking requirements per our code. So after additional discussions, LTU agreed to delete the 2 conditions that were outlined in your staff memo. And so also just as a small side note, there was a typo in the legal description where it said lot 3 and it should say lot 4, but that has been corrected and will be corrected as we move forward with council. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Can you explain what a stacking area is and how that works?
Sure. So in certain uses, when there are cars that may have to drop children off, they have parking where, I'm just going to draw really quick. So this is the building, and the cars line up and stack across the building. And so we have certain requirements, and those specific requirements Bob can kind of explain better, but that is kind of when we're referring to stacking what we mean.
It'd be very similar to any bank drive-through or restaurant drive-through.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Desi, where do you anticipate most of the parking for this facility to go within the area?
So there are cross parking arrangements throughout all of these lots 1 through 7. And so we would anticipate that they would park on the north side here, or on the west side, and also just basically wherever there is an open parking spot. I don't think that they would be parking, down in the southern part of it. But since there is cross parking arrangements throughout the use permit, they could park wherever essentially.
So there's not parking being added?
I do not believe so.
That ground slopes to the west. Has there been any indication in your working with them how they're going to handle the drainage coming off the other pad sites?
I think that would probably be a question for the applicant. I do know that there is an existing detention facility that was built basically to handle the full build-out of the development.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for staff? Okay, thank you very much. Brad?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Brad Marshall with Olson. I'm here on behalf of JDM Learning LLC. They also do business as Kids Are Kids. Kids Are Kids is a franchise, as Desi mentioned. They do have other locations that we were able to talk to them about how some of their operations actually do work and how we would apply them on this particular site. There is a request for the building to go from 14,400 to 16,500. It would not increase the overall use permit square footage. The maximum amount of children at the facility could be 266 kids enrolled. There are between, based on the other franchises, between 25 and 50% kids that go there that have siblings. And so when we start talking about traffic, a lot of these children will have brothers or sisters attending the same location, so that will reduce the trips being generated to the site. In the afternoons, they have an after-school program, and so there will be bused from several different locations to this facility. And that number is around 50 children in the afternoon. So you won't see those children in the morning either. There were some really good questions about traffic and the generation of that in the morning. Drop-offs start generally around 6:30 in the morning, and they're spread out throughout the entire morning, but the majority are between 6:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning. About 5 of the 13 businesses within this use permit open at 8 o'clock. The remainder, the other 8, actually open at 8:30 or later in the morning. Stacking, well, let me zoom in here on this plan. This does show the layout of the building. The building would be located right here, and then there's this L-shaped piece that is on the east and the south sides of the building. That would be the playground area. The building is, there is quite a bit of grade associated with the property. It would be a 2-story building. The eastern portion, which would have the play area, would generally be on the higher side of the property, and then the lower side of the property would be the floor that everybody would be entering. So most of the people coming and dropping their children off would be parking on the west side of the building and entering the lower level. I'm not sure if Desi knew this, but there would be parking added. There would be parking stalls added primarily along the play area on the east side. And then right here, right in front of the building, as Desi had drawn, there's stalls. Let me say that again. There's kind of a drop-off lane. We designated in this picture just to show how many vehicles you could stack there with the different tick marks as it would be with parallel parking. Those markings won't be there, so it won't look like parking spots. There will be, this will be a drop-off area, and so those cars will filter through there. And so we've presented this to LTU and a little bit better fashion to show how this would operate. We do anticipate also that there will be parents parking in the parking lot along the west side and getting into stalls and getting their children out and into the building. The cross parking is really good because of employees won't have to take up those stalls, and they will be able to park along the east and or even on the south side of the property where there are additional stalls that are rarely used by the development currently. Drainage, right now, I'd say probably 90% of the drainage is actually installed already, and so the additional parking will connect to it. There's a detention cell directly to the south that takes the additional runoff from the development, has been pre-planned and recently just actually upgraded to meet the current city standards and regraded and so forth. So the city has actually looked at that very recently. I will point out, as part of this, there were some questions about, accessibility of the site and the locations and traffic. The use permit boundary has 2 full access locations. One is right here, and another one is across from the Dunkin' Donuts. There is a right-in, right-out located kind of southeast of this property, and then there are 2 locations where people may be coming from the neighborhoods to drop their kids off to the site off of Canterbury, and if they don't make their way through the parking lots of the office park, they could go up to Jameson or even back down to Old Cheney and get to 2 other full access locations. Jameson is a signalized intersection, and so that would probably be a really good location for people to go. So with that, I'd be very happy to answer any questions about the application.
Any questions for Brad?
A comment. I was in New York and I got into stacking chaos, and at my granddaughter's place, so I panic when I hear stacking. They're not Nebraska nice in New York. How many stacking, how much stacking do you anticipate there?
Let's see here. I didn't count the stalls, but I think there's enough room for 5 or 6 vehicles on the west side of the building. But there's 6. We would generally give 20 or 20 plus feet for each vehicle. This day and age, the vehicles are much bigger and they do need a little bit of room. There was concern, I'll just share this, when we were talking with LTU. It was just mentioned, I start thinking about dropping kids off, and I do this about every day, dropping my children off at elementary school, and you get into line and, you get into that long stacking situation at LPS and to drop them off, and this is going to be much more spread out than that. And it's, as opposed to a school where you got an 8 o'clock opening or something, you're dropping off hundreds of kids at one time. This will be spread out. The analysis that they had provided between 6:30 and 9 o'clock for a very similar size franchise, the maximum number of vehicles that they had between 7:45 and 8 o'clock makes sense. A lot of people are going to work at that time and dropping their kids off. 20 vehicles over that 15-minute period. And so, and that 20 vehicles, you got a couple of drop-offs. Those are going to filter out. There's those will open up for other ones, and then in excess of that, there are those parking stalls that are included as part of the requirement.
Is this the case, though, where parents get out of the car and
have
walk
to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
walk
it's
the kids?
childcare, so you have to.
Childcare, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a longer period of time you're in the stacking line.
Yeah, it's not, roll up, stop, and get children getting out. It's much more, children getting out of car seats and helping them, assisting, and then get them in the doors. Yeah.
Is that a two-way, can you drive both directions on that north-south road by the stacking?
Yes.
You can?
Yes, you can.
So they could come in and pull around and then kind of
Yep.
go out the other directions?
Yeah, it'd be a normal standard width for drive lanes in a parking lot or 24 feet or wider, and that would meet that requirement.
And the thought would be that teachers would not necessarily be parking on that west side, that they would be leaving that open.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Dick?
Brad, can you take that back a little bit? That's good, thanks. If you come in off of that Old Cheney entrance, how would you get to the
property?
Property.
Good question. It's probably not very well known, but there is a drive on the west side of CVS that you can come back and get to the property. So
Okay.
there are access easements over that.
And then if you wanted to come from the north to the south on the stacking lanes, you'd have to go up and around that other building?
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd go that way and then you'd go further north, right?
Yeah, so if they were coming south, they would go out, either there's a straight shot as you go up
Right.
the hill and then out to Old Cheney, if they were to probably be making a right turning movement. Otherwise, they would probably come up that block or half block and go up to the full access where they could make those left turns out.
But then if they were going to go around, what is the building to the north of the childcare?
This, it's an office.
So they
Office
would have
uses.
to, if they wanted to go facing south to drop their children off, they would have to go around the north end of that building to come into the stacking lanes, correct?
If I'm understanding you, yes.
Okay.
Dennis?
Brad, the perpendicular parking directly across the drive lane of where the new facility is, that could also be used for parents to pull in and take the child across the drive lane to the entrance, right? So
Absolutely.
we have the stacking lane, which accommodates 5 or 6 cars, but we also have parking spaces that
Right.
that works. The directional thing is what I'm trying to get at here, is that it doesn't matter, you don't have to come at this facility from one direction. You can access it both ways and park and.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that is right.
Other questions for Brad?
Brad, is there a signal at that north entrance? I know there's one up at the street, the street north of there, but is there a signal there?
You can see where I'm pointing, just to make sure at this location.
Mm-hmm.
There is not. Jameson is the only, so besides Jameson having a signal, of course, 27th and Cheney, and then that is it.
Okay.
Those are the only signalized intersections.
And then, is that a sidewalk then to Canterbury Lane that you've shown there? That comes off the corner of the building?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Off the corner, that would be located at that location.
that's to the right-of-way sidewalk. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Another question.
Yes, sir.
Is there parking on Canterbury Lane? Do you know if there's parking allowed on that street?
The only thing I could say is based off the aerial image, it does look like there's a vehicle or two.
On there?
I don't know that there's parking prohibited.
Yep.
There is? Is there parking allowed?
Yeah.
Would you anticipate that parents may, like a lot of LPS locations, parents just ditch the whole stacking thing and park?
Avoid the stacking.
Yeah, yeah.
I would hope not.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be encouraged by any means. I mean, I would say with this particular layout, enough parking is available near and on the property itself, that
Okay.
parents would probably be discouraged from doing that. In my experience, the further you have to take the child,
I know.
not as easy of a task.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we will take any testimony in support of this application. All right, seeing none, we'll take any testimony in opposition of this item. Please come forward. Mr. Anderson, if you'd please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Anderson. My address is 6520 Winding Ridge Court, but I office at 5533 South 27th, which is the building on the north west corner of this project. And I'm going to take umbrance with his fact that only 5 or 6 of the businesses open at 6. We've got 6 or 7 businesses in our office building that open at various times, so there's more businesses there. We're concerned about the cross parking. Our parking lot is not a very good parking lot, and the cross parking there does not work very well. We're also concerned about the access points. Now, he mentioned the access point from Old Cheney. That access behind CVS to the west of CVS, I don't have any nice maps here or anything, but there's a do not enter sign there. Excuse me. You can't go to the west of CVS. Yeah, you can put that on there.
We'll take just 1 second, Dan. There you go.
Okay. This is our building right here, the white building, which I think on the sheet had ownership that Assurity owned it, which DDL owns it. Different entity. Assurity owns the building directly to the west of the building that they're proposing there. And access from Old Cheney comes in, and to get around to that building, you would have to go through the CVS parking lot on the east side of CVS, and then come down through the middle and come on the south side of their new building. And I would point out that the intersection between Westgate Bank, which is the bank there, and our building, there is not a light there, which someone pointed out, and they pile up about 2 or 3 cars a year pretty bad right there. People, it probably needs a light if we're going to have that much traffic going through there.
Mr. Anderson, do you know what businesses are in this building?
Which
Close to CVS, it's the,
they've changed. There was a restaurant in there, and it's gone out. I think there's a kickboxing place. There might be an...
Pete.
Dentist office, a haircut facility, I think there's a home realty office.
I think there's a Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut.
Pizza.
9
Okay,
round.
Thank you.
Capriati's is sitting empty.
And Mr. Anderson, the owner of the building in which you're located, or I guess have you guys in that building ever used the parking lot to the north, the church parking lot?
Yes, he does.
Because of parking?
Yes.
Okay.
He does, the building owner does, I know that, and there may be some tenants. We have tried, I encourage the son of the previous owner is running the building right now. And he's, the go-through for the bank, which is Great Western Bank there, it would be much better if they could extend that drive-through going through the church parking lot. They've never got the job done there. That would help the parking lot, because that's a circular parking lot, or circular drive-through for the bank, and then they've got to come out to that intersection that has no light.
Okay.
So there's a lot more traffic there in that lot early in the morning than a lot of people think.
Any other questions for Mr. Anderson?
So your main concern is the traffic congestion
Traffic
starting
congestion
early.
and parking.
And
yes.
parking.
Yeah. Man, I'd like a light put in at that intersection. I don't think that's going to happen, but.
Any other questions? Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify in opposition on this item? Okay, perfect. Staff questions? Any questions for Desi at all?
I guess I would like to talk to LTU a little bit.
Okay.
Bob Simmering, LTU.
Yes. In terms of the original question that came back to you and the information that the applicant gathered that assured you that it made sense to go forward, will you talk us through that a little bit?
When we originally looked at this, we just pulled the peak traffic off of the ITE, which showed, I think, about 170 vehicles per peak hour. And that had us concerned that we would be jamming up all the intersections along the residential streets coming in, or possibly even stacking out into the streets. When they were able to provide us information that showed this spread out over a much longer period of time, that really diminishes the impact at any of those intersections. And with the multiple intersections they had and the options people have, we felt that this probably addressed our concerns about that.
Okay.
With this only being a block from Jamison Lane, have you done any studies on that access from 27th into this commercial development as far as traffic counts warranting a stoplight?
We look at intersections, I don't, but traffic department does, looks at intersections for merits for warrants for traffic signals. This probably is not going to be a likely candidate because of the proximity of the traffic signals in either direction.
Yeah,
and when you get them too close, they don't really function properly.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Bob or Desi?
Do you know how far it is from the new building to, say, the Mr. Anderson's building? How far? What I'm concerned about is, on a map, I'm not good with maps, I have to go look. But it looks like it's a distance, and I question whether parents will park there. And is there closer parking that, I mean, there are a number of parking spots, and Brad said there are new ones coming, but is it a long walk or a short walk between the two buildings?
Are you talking about the distance between here to here?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could scale it off.
Well, just an approximate. Pardon me? 40 yards. 40 yards, okay.
And the entrance to the new building will be on the west, is that correct?
East.
Or on the east,
West.
yes.
West.
West.
No, it's on the west, yeah.
Yeah.
What? Oh.
North is to the top.
So, yeah, it's.
Thanks, Dick.
Any other questions for Desi or Bob?
Bob, did you look at any, or did traffic recommend any additional turn lanes or anything like that to maybe look at some of that congestion?
We did not. That was one of the concerns we had originally, was if that impact was going to be in that peak hour, should we look at those things? And I think they've alleviated that concern.
And what were the numbers, did they say again?
I
Do you
thought-
recall?
The numbers,
For, instead of the 178, which is what you looked at from a chart standpoint, what the actuals were based on their other facilities?
you have that?
Oh, great, thank you.
So this breaks it up into 15-minute increments, and you can kind of see it spread out. And then the applicant is saying, since there's 5 different access points, they'll be coming in from, not all 20 cars would be coming in on one access point.
Do you know if where this other location is?
I do not.
Where the
I
study
don't
came from?
believe it's in Nebraska.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right. That's what I was just wondering in terms of, or even if demographics of the area were similar in terms of, just curious. Okay.
Do you have a pickup chart also?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you very much. Brad?
I think traffic is probably the biggest concern here, and I completely understand that. When we got the information, we analyzed it. Bob had mentioned the peak hour. It is more than an office use. I think we recognize that. What I did in the table that Desi had just showed here, under the most trips generated under 1 hour, it's between 60 and 70 vehicles. I'm assuming that probably does include a little bit more for employees, but most of the employees are showing up at 6:30 in the morning. They may stagger them because not all 200 kids come at one time again, but what we tried to depict on this image is the multiple locations. It's hard to differentiate exactly how those trips are going to be dispersed in this development. Myself or you or whoever is going, and will find the easiest mode of transportation. I mean, the route that they're going to take to either to work or to back home, usually it's the shortest. And so I do think, this is just my opinion, that Canterbury will be used a little bit more than maybe thought about at this time. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because it's off and it's but with the entrance west facing, you do have a couple of locations to get to major intersections on arterials, and Jameson being there with the signal is going to be a route that I think may be utilized a little bit more. No doubt people will go through the parking lot and go to the right in and right out and or the full intersection without the signal and wait with vehicles as they do, and they will stack up during the larger, the peak times that kids are being dropped off and people are coming and leaving businesses. So,
Brad, how many staff people are they anticipating?
At max, with the 266, there will be a max of 25 employees.
Okay. And how many parking spots did you put on the west side? add to the west side?
It looks around 15 on the,
Yeah.
and that would be on the east side.
Oh, I'm sorry, east side, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not good with maps.
And there's probably just as many on the west, or that are currently on or fronting that property on
I
the
think
west.
staff will, well, you have no way of knowing, never mind.
You know, as I pointed out, and I don't know, but if I were asked by the applicant where a great location would be, it is around this detention cell, which is off to the south. We installed those as part of the design when we did Dunkin' Donuts as a requirement, or they were there, excuse me, but they're very underutilized in my opinion, and so that would be a great location for employees to park.
And Brad, could you confirm for us that there will not be parent drop-off at all on the east side of the building? Or pickup?
I don't think, from my understanding, the entrance, and I would assume the daycare has kind of a lockdown situation
Right.
on entrances. There's not intended to be a main entrance on the east side.
Okay. And then
I would think that.
where's the
playground
play
would be
area?
fenced.
The play area,
Is it all around? Is it the entire L?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is all of that space.
And that would be fenced, correct?
It would be fenced, absolutely.
Does the circles represent something specific?
It's just, it is actually it's just, they look huge in this, the way it printed out, but that's actually a fence.
Oh.
It's supposed to be much, much smaller, but that's what that actually is.
Other questions for Brad?
And did you have a pickup chart? Did they provide you a pickup chart versus a drop-off chart of number?
Oh, at evening, I had not received that,
Okay.
no.
And that facility is in the state, is that correct, Brad?
Dick, I'm not sure of where the actual facility came from.
Okay.
On that one, where it was. They have more than one. They are a franchise, and so they do have multiple locations around the country.
And on that the outlot around the detention cell, is that 29 stalls there? Is that what you count also? Because we have then the retaining wall on the back side of the existing buildings, Dunkin' Donuts and CVS, et cetera, there. I'm just trying to get a feel for that.
I counted 27.
Perfect,
but,
perfect, yeah,
I don't remember what you said.
No, I think that's okay.
But yeah, that is, off the Dunkin' Donuts and the CVS, that parking sits way below. There's actually stairs that go down to it from the Dunkin' Donuts.
So they can
lot.
get donuts?
Yeah, they could.
Important for kids.
It's important.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to
I would
close hearing.
move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Joy?
Jerry?
Okay, Albadre?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Beckius?
Yes.
Motion carried, 8-0.
I would move that we approve application use permit 15E.
Is there a second?
Second, Albadri.
Discussion?
My reason is this is a property that has been very difficult to fill in the past. I think child care makes a great deal of sense in there, and I think they've accounted for several different opportunities for entrance and exit. And I think it would be a good fit for that piece of property.
Others?
I think it's a good infill project. It's the type of, a nice opportunity. I do think that I appreciate LTU's review and feeling as if the parking in the area is sufficient and that they've made appropriate allocations for parent traffic and other uses of the property.
I'm going to support it. It's a hard decision, but I am going to support it because I too think childcare is a good use for this. Who knows what else could go in its place, creating more chaos with traffic and parking. I think that staff and the applicant have done a good job of adjusting as they've seen fit, so I will support it.
And I also will be supporting, my fellow commissioners have made good points there. And then I do really like the use of the 27 stalls there to the south and potential as it comes around off of Canterbury Lane, and encourage that use versus through the other businesses on site. But I will be supporting the motion.
I'll support it also. I do have some concerns. I think everybody's talked about the traffic issues. I think Canterbury Lane's going to see a lot more traffic than it does now, obviously, and it concerns me a little bit. And I agree with the comment about the parking. I think if there's any way that we can encourage that to happen, that would be very beneficial. It's clear that there's enough parking with the cross agreements on the whole site. I think we're at 60 or 70 spaces more than what's required, but it's just about where they're located in proximity to the existing buildings. So if that southern parking lot could be used by this facility, that would be great.
All right, Jerry?
Okay, this is for the conditional approval of use permit 15E as per the revised staff report. El Badre?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Raymond Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Becky, yes.
Yes.
Motion carried 8-0. Okay. Before I call the next item, I will announce that Commissioner Shear has declared a conflict of interest on this item and will recuse himself for this portion of the meeting. Item 4.2, Administrative Amendment 19070, an appeal to the Planning Director's approval to revise the land use and floor area on property generally located at South 87th Street and Highway 2. Staff recommendation is approval. This is final action on this item unless appealed to the City Council within 14 days. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed?
I see none.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting the site?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Abby?
Good afternoon, Abby Luttrell from the Law Department. What is before you today is an appeal to an administrative amendment to a use permit. And since this is somewhat unusual, we thought it might be helpful to kind of orient you first before Brian Will gets into the substance. So our ordinances allow the planning director to make minor changes to use permits, which is what happens here. And when that happens, a letter goes out to people who could be impacted, and they have a certain amount of time to appeal that decision, and that brings it to you. And that's what happened here. Our ordinances also read that by the time it gets to you, the planning director's decision is advisory. So I think it will be helpful for you to look at this as if it was coming to you for the first time, as if the applicant has asked you to make these changes in the use of one block within this use permit, and then there are some resulting changes on a trip calculator. So as you hear the information today, it will be just like it's coming to you for the first time. The planning department staff will tell you about the substance of it, their recommendation. There will be an opportunity for the opposition or support to give testimony, and at that time, the appellant, I assume, is who will come and talk to you about their opposition. Then there will be a chance for staff questions again and rebuttal. So unless you have questions for me, I'll let Brian fill you in on
Questions for
that.
Abby before we let her go?
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby.
Good afternoon, Brian Will, Planning Department. As Abby noted, this is an appeal. So if it strikes you as a little unusual, I think we were going back through the record. As far as we could tell, I think this is the first one that's come to the Planning Commission since the ordinance has been revised and allowed for this expanded range of administrative appeals, administrative amendments. So what is it we're talking about? let me kind of start from big to small here. So we're talking about use permit number 150, and it's sort of right here, this intersection is 84th and Highway 2. So the big shopping center on the north side with Menards, Walmart, Sam's Club is here. Sort of its associated relative on the south side is use permit 150. So north side, use permit 140, use permit 150 on south side. I mentioned the one on north side because these two are related, they're sort of associated. And it dates back to essentially before much was out here. So what I'm going to do is, without getting into too much detail and being too dry about it, I do want to give you the background, so bring us up to speed about what it is we're talking about here today. This land use table, this trip generation. So what I've got here is a map. We've gone back to, actually, is 1997. So here again, here's the intersection of 84th and Highway 2. So you'll notice that 84th Street has not been realigned yet. Pine Lake Road has not been improved. The big intersection improvements in Highway 2 haven't been made. So it's sort of in a raw state pre-development. So as the developer came forward and started working with the city, as is most always the case in developments like this at the edge of the city, the infrastructure is not there that is necessary, that is the improved roadways, water, sewer. So had been anyway, a negotiated process, a series of lengthy and very boring meetings, I can tell you from experience, to get to the point where the applicant and the city reach an agreement in the form of an annexation agreement to allow the development to occur. So the substance of what we focus on here today is this annexation agreement, and what it does essentially spells out the financial responsibilities, the cost sharing primarily, between the developer and the city of how are we going to get this to where it looks more like this, with the modern infrastructure needed to support the center. So there was a cost sharing, in the case of this one, a cost sharing formula between the city and the developer in order to help this occur. Remember, this isn't at the time planned for in the capital improvements program, so that's why these negotiations occur. So how do we figure out, how do we determine what to base this cost sharing formula, this ratio, how do we do that? Well, very early on, and with the submittals for the preliminary plat and the use permit, one of the primary tools that is employed is having the applicant submit a traffic study along with that preliminary plat and use permit. And so what does a traffic study do? I mean, the best it can do is base its outcome on a series of assumptions. And so I would imagine it would go something like the developer proposes what he believes are going to be the eventual users and the types of users and the floor areas per user, big box, restaurant, beauty salon, that sort of thing. So his participation, financial participation, his share of it is then largely based upon that impact, those uses in this area. So the traffic study comes back with this set of assumptions, and that set of assumptions has several things associated with it, and one of them being trip generation. Well, how many lanes in the roads? Where were the turn lanes? What kind of intersections? Stoplights or not? So the improvements we see here on Pine Lake Road, South 91st is now an arterial street and constructed. We have lighted intersections in Highway 2, realigned 84th Street. So those things are one of the things that come out of that study. And again, that helps determine then the developers' participation in the cost of improvements. So we go through the process of having, in this case, both use permits, two separate ones, 140 and 150, and they're about 4 or 5 years apart. But what we're talking about here today is use permit 150, south side. So that original annexation agreement and use permit split the allowed trips up based upon the assumptions, okay? These are the uses, these are the amount of trips that are anticipated based upon those uses. It divided them out. So many for the north, so many for the south. Roughly, I think 4,000 trips on the north side, 1,200 approximately on the south side. So that table of assumptions of the initial uses in the traffic study, for better or for worse, they were pulled out and they were placed on the use permit. Okay, and so I'm not going to be able to get the whole site plan here, but what I'm going to do is focus in on a portion of it here. So, I'm sorry?
Is that Exhibit B?
Yes, the table itself, I zoomed in, yes, and it's in your packet. And so this is the table that is part of the use permit. In its original form, probably came about verbatim out of that traffic study. Okay, so it's placed on and made a part of the use permit. So you read down through the uses that are listed here, and it talks about specific uses and specific amounts of floor area per lot. Well, it's about 6 months after approval, and Lot 3, gas station doesn't want to go there, an auto parts store, or you name it. But the changes start coming because the assumptions, well, they were the best guess at the time, but reality is not quite working out that way. And so with the original approval, it was, I think, in everybody's, particularly city's interest, to keep a pretty close eye on a couple numbers here. This total floor area, because that number does come from the approving resolution for the use permit. So there is a cap there. And then this other number over here in the corner, which there's actually two numbers there. One is the total number of trips represented, and then the total number allocated for the south side. And so if you had a magnifying glass and you could read those, what it will say is there's a total of 636 trips shown by the uses here out of 1,239 that are allocated. So they're at about half of the number that they potentially could use here. So since 2004, when this use permit was approved, it was a series of amending this table to take the automotive store out and allow a convenience store or a gas station. 17 of them, in fact, I counted over time. So a few years ago, we had conversations between the applicant and the city, and because all of the infrastructure has been constructed in the area, water lines, sewer lines, improvements in the roadways, the developer's financial responsibility has been satisfied as a condition of the annexation agreement. And so we'd started the conversation about and made the suggestion that, this thing has really outlived its usefulness. It really doesn't serve a purpose anymore. The developer has satisfied his requirements, financial obligations of the city, and, in our mind, we just don't see a way that this center is going to develop in a way that is going to blow the lid off any trip or floor area out here. It's just not, we just don't see that as a distinct possibility. And so we've been suggesting for a while that this land use table be deleted entirely. Well, before it has been or will be deleted entirely, the owner or soon-to-be owner of Lot 3, Block 1, Gotcha Covered, came in and applied for an administrative amendment to change the land use, I'll leave this up, to change the land use on the table so that he could site on that lot from automotive, I can't remember, automotive repair or
Automotive Care Center?
Thank you. That's what it was, yes. Change that from furniture store / warehouse. Something that more closely approximates the nature of his business than does the automotive store. So we reviewed it, knowing what the use is. This certainly more closely approximates the activity. Both of them, and actually anything related to them, are all allowed uses in the B5, so there's not a question of zoning. We did ask the LTU folks to take a look at the ITE trip generation rates for the uses shown, the furniture store and warehousing, and they're appropriate. And so based upon that, the amendment was approved. And so, as I said, we've done many of these over the years. They've been fairly straightforward. The rationale or the need to continue with these relative to any enforcement of the zoning ordinance, that is minimal these days. And so, like I said, we are encouraging that this be dropped from the use permit entirely. Well, that has not happened yet. So in any event, this administrative amendment coming to you to revise the land use table from automotive to furniture store and warehouse had been approved once by staff. We supported it then, and we support that amendment coming to you now as well. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dick?
Brian, is the reason that is coming to us is because the planning director did not change and add those two?
No.
Okay.
Nope. This table, as you see it, this exhibit B, that land use table is from the approved plan that the director approved, the administrative amendment. It shows the furniture store and warehouse. Did I get your question right?
Yeah, as I read through all the stuff, and we may hear from the applicant, but I was just confused where there was, it's because the table still exists, basically, is why we're dealing with this.
Well, yes, after it was approved, then the appellant, the person, David Fiala, who's appealing it, he has an issue with this approval, the use, furniture store and warehouse, I believe. But he's here, I believe, and he's going to speak to that, okay?
Okay.
It's not my issue, that's
Right.
separate and apart from it, okay?
Okay.
Brian, could you walk us through the city's rationale behind the classification as to the use of this particular user and why, for example, the city of Lincoln said it was a furniture use versus another type of use?
Yeah, well, and actually, we didn't say it was a furniture store.
Was that
So
submitted by
this,
the applicant?
this amendment comes from the applicant,
Right.
and understanding that the applicant, Iger Corp.
You agreed with, the city agreed with?
Yes, we agree with it.
Okay.
But theirs is primarily tracking trip generation, so they want to be more careful in that regard. This is furniture store. You could probably classify it as a couple different things in the zoning ordinance. It may be just straight retail, maybe a contractor service. I mean, a couple different things.
Sure.
In any event, they all would be permitted uses in the B5 district, so we didn't have an issue with that. So the use they were showing, furniture store,
Right.
based upon what we know of the user, Gotcha Covered, we said, yep, that's pretty close. They could be that. And so we approved it.
And so were there items that you looked at, Brian, that were consistent with perhaps a hardware superstore that you do not find consistent with the applicant today?
Right. It's not a Menards. It's not a, I mean, by the way, one thing thank you, I neglected to do. Let me show you, by the way, the lot that we're talking about. Let me zoom in on it. So, by the way, this is the entrance at 87th Street. This is a stoplight going into north side of Walmart. Okay. Gas station right here as you come in. We're talking about this lot right here. And so we're talking about, we're talking about a 13,000 square foot building. So it's certainly not something of the superstore size. So no, we definitely don't believe that it falls into that category.
Thank you. Tracy, did you have? Okay. Any other questions for Brian? Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Applicant. Oh, she has a lot of books with her.
Okay, I know. I'm left-handed, so I get that.
Hello, Danae.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission. Danae Kalkowski. I'm appearing today on behalf of Iger Corp. Iger Corp was the developer of the shopping centers out here, both on the north and south side of Highway 2. And Brian stole some of my thunder because he gave you a very detailed analysis of the background. And I'm going to maybe touch on that just a little bit more. And then Barry Fowler is here, the owner of Gotcha Covered. He's going to just talk to you a little bit about the use of the property. And then Tim Gergen with the Clark Anderson Partners is going to talk to you about how they determined what was put on the land use table. So I think Brian did a good job of talking to you about that annexation agreement. And we've been before you multiple times as more phases of the property out here has come in. But, originally, the annexation agreement master planned for the development of both the north and the south side of Highway 2 out here. And then we've come in over time with various phases of the development. That master plan planned sewer, water, and roads, and as Brian said, there was a significant amount of road improvements that were needed for what was planned for development out here. Those improvements were, in the end, determined to be based upon a traffic study, multiple traffic studies, actually, because there were iterations that went through changing land use, changing square footage, et cetera, till we could come to an agreement with the city on X amount of traffic generation would be supported by these specific street improvements. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about that traffic study because it relates directly then to the use of this land use table. So the traffic study was based upon these books, the latest, greatest thing at the time, and the sixth trip generation manual put out by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. So this is what the traffic study and the trip cap numbers were based upon. So today, when we're changing the table, we are using use designations and trip rates based upon these same books so that we're comparing like to like. Because based upon those traffic studies, there was a cap or a certain maximum amount of trips to be generated from this site that in the annexation agreement then were represented as trip caps, north and south. This is a little unique in all of the annexation agreements I've done. We're largely worried about square footage, but this is the first one where trips were very important. And so to implement that, both of the use permits on both the north side and the south side implemented these supersized land use tables. So they have not only the stuff that the land use would typically have, but then they have the trip. And they follow basically the methodology that was used in the traffic study. So basically, this has been in existence since 2001, the annexation agreement. The use permit since 2004. As Brian mentioned, we've gone through iterations of administrative amendments because every time a use changes or you add square footage, et cetera, you need to come in and change the land use and the trip generation table. The purpose of our hearing today is just to talk about, did we fill out the table appropriately for Gotcha Covered, for the use that they want to make of that. I know in Mr. Fiala's appeal, he mentions, all other kind of changes to the land use table, but I'm not here to discuss those today because we're really focused just on this administrative amendment. Based upon conversations with planning and city law, we have discussed bringing forth an application to just remove the land use table because we don't have the same conditions that are needed today that were in existence back then when we didn't know what was going to happen. So to that kind, we have submitted an amendment for the annexation agreement to get rid of the trip caps. We'll be following up then with trying to get rid of the tables. That's just a little bit of background. What I'd like you to focus on then is what Mr. Fowler's going to tell you about his use, and then what Tim's going to talk to you about how using these books, they came up with the number to go on the table. And then we'll all three be available to answer any questions when we're done.
So Mr. Fowler's next?
Excuse me?
Mr. Fowler's next?
Yes.
Perfect.
My name is Barry Fowler. I'm the owner of Gotcha Covered. The best way to probably describe our stores is a design center. Most of what we do is sell installed sales. If someone wants to remodel their kitchen, if someone wants to put new flooring down, if they want furniture, we actually do sell furniture. The majority of our business is something that they're going to come in and they use our showroom as a way to pick out the products and the style and the design that they want to have in their house. We're kind of a design build turnkey for remodeling and new construction. We don't in our store we don't stock anything. We don't have inventory. What we have in our showroom for the most part is just simply so that they can see, most people want to look at the tile, they want to touch the tile. So we've got, a whole tile display section so that they can see the product that they're going to put in. Same thing, we have carpet, same thing. We have enough furniture so that they can sit on the couches, but again, we very rarely sell anything that's on our floor because most people that are using our showroom are going to come in with a specific style in mind, and we're not going to stock that. We just don't put anything in. The warehouse use that we have is the way we operate. We won't start on a client's remodel project until we actually have all the product. There's enough horror stories out there where someone's was supposed to have a 6-week remodel project, and 8 months later they're still waiting on some product to come in. We have our warehouse so that we don't run into some of those types of issues. We actually get all the product and stage it, have it ready, checked in, know that we've got the right stuff. It's all not broken. And our warehouse isn't used to store inventory. Our warehouse is used to store product that's coming in for a particular client. Our average client is going to spend anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 with us at their project. So it's, we don't have a lot of small projects. We have a lot of larger projects is what we gear towards.
And we'll ask questions of you in a bit after Mr. Gergen comes up.
Thank you. Tim Gergen with Clark Anderson Partners. Go back through this here a little bit again. So the lot we're talking about, Gotcha Covers, is half-acre lot right here. Gas station, oil change place, and then 110-foot by 250-foot lot right here along the highway. Half-acre lot. The administrative amendment was submitted for 12,200 square feet. A small retail store compared to a home improvement store. This lot right here in the administrative amendment use permit site plan. Nothing changed within the site plan. Same lot lines, same access points, same utilities. The only thing that changed on the administrative amendment was the land use table. So typically when we do these use permit administrative amendments. That's the only thing that changes. Like Brian said, we're at number 17. We've done this many times before. This is one that's changed before. So we changed Block 1, Lot 3, and we divided it into 2 categories, essentially based on hearing what Barry sold, been in the gotcha covers, knowing what the merchandise sold. It's a furniture store. We labeled it as a furniture store. City of Lincoln agreed with it. What he sells is very complimentary to what a furniture store sells. You go to Mrs. B's, they sell carpet, they sell appliances. What he doesn't sell is he doesn't sell nails, screws, outdoor playground equipment. He doesn't sell lumber. You don't see items at a hardware store or like a Lowe's or Home Depot. Barry's not selling that. And you couldn't fit that in a half-acre lot. It's a smaller lot, and it's geared for certain items. And so that is what drove us to the furniture store. Also a warehouse. So then we get into, this is Barry's site plan. This is the private roadway up here. This is Highway 2 here. The entire north part is all warehouse. Here's his loading dock, and then merchandise is put in through here, and then office area, and then here's the sales floor area. So almost over half the building is dedicated to a warehouse, and the other half is dedicated to the furniture store, what he retails. So that's why we broke out the land use table into 2 separate categories. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have on the administrative amendment.
Why don't we get all 3 of you up here for questions? Okay. Questions? Dean?
To clarify, you're closer to a Davidson's furniture store than you are a Menards or a Mrs. B rather than a Menards?
That would be correct.
Okay. And you clarified no nails, no hammers, none of that stuff.
Correct. We don't sell tools, we don't sell nails, no.
Okay, thank you.
Dick?
Can you explain to me why you appealed the amendment approval by the planning director then?
I didn't.
No.
Oh.
We're the applicant.
We're the applicant.
For the amendment.
Okay.
So the appellant.
We will hear during testimony in opposition from the individual that appealed.
So you're saying though that it should stay as furniture store warehousing?
Yes.
Okay.
We're saying what the planning director approved was appropriate.
Okay.
Mr. Fowler, could you tell us, guess for us, if you will, an average of how many customers visit your site every day? And could you also tell me on the average day how many employees you have on site?
We run fairly limited store hours. We open at, I think, 9:30 in the morning to the public, and we close at 5:30.
Okay.
We do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, we're open from 9:30 till 7, so we have 1 evening a week. And Fridays, we close at 4. We're not open at all on the weekends.
Okay.
On average, we're going to get somewhere between 4 and 10 clients a day.
Okay.
Most days, there are days we have nobody that walks in the store. We're a destination spot, not something, usually someone needs to be wanting to buy what we're selling before they're going to come into our store.
Sure. And how many employees on the average day would you have on site?
That have on site, we have about 10.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
And then what type of truck traffic do you have?
We'll probably have 2 or 3 deliveries a day.
And with what type of vehicle?
We'll have everything from just a smaller box truck all the way on up to full-size semi.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Tim, I saw that you had divided out the trip count warehouse versus retail. Let's just say for theory that we went all retail. What kind of impact would we be having on that size of square foot? I mean, we're talking still a minimal change, correct?
It would be a fraction of a PM trip.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the overall site is generated 4 PM trips where maybe more of a high turn, like a McDonald's might be generating like a 36 PM trips through there. So it's a very low traffic generator. Part of the concerns, items that we have that we want to get rid of this table is because we're dealing with an ITE manual from 1997, and we all know that retail has changed quite a bit in 23 years. There's really not a category for a gotcha covered in those manuals from 1997. And so we think that if we look back at this table,
And really, our trip count's so low that there's no usable space at this point to get the trip count anywhere near what capacity could be. Is that correct?
that is correct. That is
Okay.
correct. The reason planning department and the developer overall is we're showing 636 trips that the project is generating south side of Highway 2, and we're allowed 1,239. So we're less than half than what we're going to allowed to get, and our property is over 75% developed. So we're confident we're going to be under the trip cap, and that we think we're very comfortable with just eliminating this table altogether.
Other questions for the three? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any testimony in support of this application? Seeing none, any testimony in opposition? Come on down. And if you could just give us your name and address for the record before you start, please.
I did have a handout.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Thank you.
It's all yours.
Okay. Hey, hi, Commissioners. My name's David Fiala. I live at 492 West Lake Shore in Capitol Beach. I am the person that filed the appeal on this matter. And my history, just briefly, I'm a business owner of several businesses. I'm from here, but I moved to Chicago in the 90s and then back around 2000. And was an instructor at university for a few years, started my business, and been also involved in residential real estate. So I've worked with and managed approximately 50 properties over this time frame, but all residential, nothing new, so no reason to be in front of city planning. Up until 2015, when we purchased some ground to build in this development,
Okay.
Which is owned by FAA Properties at 8601 Amber Hill Court, which is right across the street from this development. So I guess the one item that wasn't brought up, and actually, what a question, could I see one of those books? The first one. One of the things that wasn't said, and this is why would someone care, I suppose, about looking at these numbers and how they're applicable in a situation in terms of incentives for deviances and what the numbers should be based on the rules set forth by the city, so to speak. One of the items a couple items that Brian mentioned and Abby mentioned that as far as any time there's an amendment proposed, there were not letters coming out to owners. The first time I got a letter was when I filed this appeal. Then I got a letter in the mail. Not really that important, but just to point that out. And that Brian also mentioned in terms of a retail use may be more fitting for this amendment that was proposed, that I filed appeal on a very specific reason with the application that I specified in my appeal. So Brian did note that the retail use made sense in terms of for this particular use. So with the actual application that was provided, it was asking for a specialty retail use. That's what's on the application. And I will ask, you do have a copy of the appeal with the pages that came along with it. So what I'm providing is the following, that it does matter if the uses are correct for this particular development, because it was set up in 2004 with these traffic studies mattering in terms of the percent, excuse me, I kind of need a drink of water, but the percentage of the cost share. So what a 4 trips versus a retail use calculation that would be 41 trips is the difference between paying 0.5% and 5% of the assessments annually made based on the current bylaws and protective covenants of the association. So there is a material impact on us that's financial to assure that these calculations are accurate. And so that's what wasn't provided to you. And as a part of my appeal, with the attachments, I provided the actual pages from this book that spell out those uses, the specific categories of the use on those pages. So, for example, put this in here.
It'll come up in just 1 second.
Would it be okay if I just went, is there a drinking fountain on there?
Yeah.
I've just
There is. Why don't we go ahead and take a 5-minute break here real
Good idea.
quick, and we'll reconvene at 2:50.
Okay.
Okay?
I appreciate it.
5 minutes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you. And I'll try to speed this along. I don't think it should take very long. So the application itself did ask for a specialty retail use, and that's what was approved in the approval letter on the 19th of December. And so I was not appealing that. I agree with that. What I was appealing to was the PM trip calculation that was provided in the table along with that requested use and the specific approval from the city for that use. In terms of the book, and I go ahead and here on the warehouse using, a warehouse is a warehouse, and a furniture store is a furniture store, and a retail shop is a retail shop. And I've talked to Randy Hoskins before he retired, I think, or left recently, city engineer, after talking to Brian with the city, suggested talking to him, that suggested that the use should be included, and I've spoken to other engineers that said, hey, this is the use, that's the use. You're not doing a warehouse. You have a warehouse. People are going to go in the back and look at the materials that you have. If you're selling them, it's still used for that use, period. So that was my understanding. It should all be included in that use. In terms of material impact on traffic, we're not talking about that. I've made it clear that there's no use we're objecting to that's allowable there within the zoning. So we're not talking about any kind of traffic concerns whatsoever. There aren't any there. Never see any in regards to flowing in and out of this facility. And simply put, that the annex agreement that was made, as history is shown here 20 years later from the research and work that people like yourself did 20 years ago that approved this, you guys are right. They were right. They said what was proposed for all the infrastructure here is probably more than what's needed. So we're going to approve this annex agreement with specifically what it says in it, even though there was some items that's been referred to me that aren't common, such as the standard 15% and 20% reductions in the trip calculations that was agreed to in this annex agreement that was proposed to the city. But those are part of the table that you've looked at today and we'll look at here in a second. So those are standard parts of the agreement. And so that big gap, to me, that big gap in what's going to be used in terms of the trip calculation and what was allowable, was the city looked at it and said, no problem here. Let's sign it and we'll agree to this and move forward. So we aren't talking about any specific traffic issues. We're talking specifically about the calculations in the table.
And let me make sure I'm understanding correctly. The calculations in the table are then used in terms of your private management agreement for the commercial center, or the portions of the commercial center which are shared, drive aisles, so on and so forth, in terms of your annual common area maintenance?
Correct.
Is that correct? And so your concern primarily is that the private agreement relies upon the trip count generator in order to break those fees down. Is that?
Correct, and I'll get into that even a little bit further of some of the problems that I found, that I went back and audited the calculations to reach a conclusion that I have, today, and including with this scenario. And on page, I had this cover page, and I just read what Brian had written as a recommendation on the city website today. I didn't know anything was there until I just looked a couple hours ago, and I just wrote this up in terms of make sure it's clear with my recommendation that if the proposed special retail use is approved, which it was, then the table should reflect that. And so on page 2 of the table of the handout, the highlighted item, block 1, lot 3, it includes that specialty retail use. It's code 814. The ITE 6th edition generator is there out of the book that I looked and verified that that's accurate this morning. And then there's the calculation down to 41. So that would be that calculation, plain and simple. And what you also see is, from an audit result perspective, the errors that I found.
We have 1 minute left. Keep talking.
Okay. The audit result that I found in regards to differences in the calculations, both before what was presented before and what I found based on the calculations of the book. And just to show on a couple different items, Iger Corp., they weren't using the total pumps, therefore they had a lower number to pay less money. And this wasn't disclosed to anybody. We had asked questions to audit this and information, including pages from this book, which I didn't have and was never provided to me, and it wasn't getting provided. And if you look down on Block 3, Lot 1, on this page, you'll see a 492 use and a 128 generator for my business.
Yes, sir.
And in terms of the 492, that fits the definition of the use, the proposed use and the use that is there in regards to our exercise classes, weightlifting equipment, saunas, showers that we have, and we don't have any other sport-specific anything. We don't have a restaurant or anything like that. This is our use code. The ITE trip number for the PM peak hour generator, which just states in the agreement, is 128. And if you go back and actually, am I going to get cut short on time, or?
Try to finish it up if you can, and then we'll start asking you questions.
If you go to the third to the last page, which is also this is the same Exhibit B that you just discussed previously. If you look on this use of 492, there's a number of 353 instead of 128, which is in this book as we're looking at here today.
Sure.
And so there was a miscalculation there that, as an end result of my audit, and said, look, if these were calculated correctly, and I don't, the dues that were assessed based on the changes that I found were extremely significant and impactful on what it meant to us, while these numbers, these calculations were represented to us as calculated by the city of Lincoln, not by somebody else.
Okay.
So, I mean, just to put these dollars and cents on this impact, if you can zoom in a little bit more. But this, over the last, can you zoom in more on this or not?
Actually, the zoom in, I think we have the gist of your point. What's the bottom line dollar amount that you want to reference?
That for the Iger reduction over 4 years, that was a reduction in $18,000 in assessed dues, where for us, if we were charged 5 times what we should have been, we've paid $56,000 for the small development, and this resulted in an overpayment of $42,000 due to this misrepresentation of the calculation for our business.
Okay. All right. I think we
So my, and, you know, Dennis recused himself, but this even went to where Clark Anderson was involved with this, and I couldn't get an answer. Which I really wanted was just these pages in this book.
Okay.
And, you know, we requested a response, and I'm talking to Dennis because I wasn't getting a response from Tim, and he, again, represented to me that these came from the city.
Okay.
And I go to the city, to Brian or to Steve, and Brian's saying, absolutely not. We didn't calculate these. I don't vouch for them. We've just said, and they've known this, that we really don't pay attention. We don't have the book in city planning anymore because it's an old book. We're going to approve it because this is way under the trips that we need, and we're fine. We're going to approve it because the trips, we don't really care what the calculation is. And so my point is we still should make sure they're accurate and have a means to do that.
Okay.
So I didn't realize I was going to get cut short, but I mean.
Yeah, I think your time is done here. Have you mentioned everything you want to mention? I will give you one more minute if there's anything else you want to add, and then after that minute, we will move on.
Okay. Well, the facts, and you have a copy of my complaint. So the facts in terms of this business, I'm looking as a pure analyst. I'm like, this is what the business says on their website. You turn it into specialty retail. I agree with that. I provided just an alternative one that would have produced a lower PM trip count as that superstore. Is there some things that fit, but I agree it's not like a Menards, of course.
Okay.
So I put that forth in my appeal, but I'm providing you data. I'm providing you the exact pages, the exact descriptions of the uses, and then that code that comes along with it. And I'm also showing that there's been a lot of abuse or errors in regards to these calculations. And there's a mention now of eliminating the table. Well, I've been asking about this for 4 years, and I haven't been getting responses, and I finally got these books because I wasn't getting them presented to me and the city didn't have them. So these wrong numbers were in these tables, and those that had the books wouldn't provide that information. And so you're getting that information, and there's now a discussion about eliminating this table when I've filed an amendment to correct the table.
Okay, you're at your minute time frame. Let's move on to questions. Any questions at all? Dick? Or sorry.
Is not your argument with Iger Corp rather than with this applicant?
I'd say that's, in either instance, that's not really applicable today, but I would say you're correct in terms of if there was a number made by Iger Corp or Clark Anderson that represented this came from the city, which was untrue, of course that's that issue, and it's not the city's issue, that someone said something that was inaccurate, or if there was just a mistake.
Well, and Iger would have set the parameters originally for what the CAM charges were going to be, correct?
Okay, in terms of what the CAM charges would be, that question would be answered with the specific services is moving the snow off the streets, mowing the common area, water retention areas, lighting the street lights, and insurance. And then they're going to have miscellaneous little repairs or expenses that come up. And, that's another topic that obviously there's an issue with Iger, to where that expense only appears to be about $20,000 a year. And then normally in an association, I have experience with about 7 associations, that you would build a reserve number every year to build that reserve, which I think for this association, that reserve would be approximately $7,000, $8,000 a year to cover that once in 20, 25 year road resurface that would probably cost $100 for the small amount of streets that are there. So that would build those reserves. So, but in terms of that, as far as what was disclosed was the real expenses, which I've just described. As far as what was billed to us, the amounts have been $80,000 a year. Expenses such as mowing, which is worth a handful of thousands of dollars, was getting paid to Iger's interest to the tune of over $40,000 in 1 year. So there's a huge problem there in terms of the embezzlement looking scheme within the association. And this is really an extension of it when there's a misrepresentation of the trips that's put upon us. And I should be able to have good faith shown to me and correct numbers and correct calculations, not need to question it. But when I started asking questions, then there was more personal attacks and that type of stuff happening versus just show me the page in the book. Because I'm just sitting there going, just show me the page in the book.
Okay. Did they answer your question, Dick?
Not fully. How close is the association to taking over the association itself versus Iger? What is the covenants? I mean, what do they call for?
Okay, that's a great question, and it's a question I have as well for the following reasons. The association was established with resolutions provided in minutes in 2008, so 12 years ago, that said everything other than the specific building design approvals that Iger was passing on to the association. Typically in any association I've been involved with, you take those common areas and they're deeded over to the nonprofit entity that's created, but they haven't done that yet. So that's a little bit of a question of why haven't you done that? It just would make sense from a binding perspective. It's their expense on their property until they deed that over to the nonprofit. So 2008 would answer the question, and in terms of the association is the one responsible, from my understanding, based on the minutes provided to me. But I then hear side claims and things that change in regards to what the truth is. So that's obviously a challenge to always reach the truth and be told the truth on a consistent basis, or just give us the pages of the book when you ask for it to support what was represented to us.
So are they listed as outlots? All the green spaces?
Yes. In terms of the, I want to say it's a 67-foot right-of-way on both sides of the streets as they go through, so there's approximately only 2/3 of a mile of streets in the small association, and then the 4 water retention areas are outlots, and then the green space, which would be the right-of-way space that's required from even going back to the south to Highway 2, which is about, from the, my understanding is, actually talking, obviously Brian's given me a lot of information as well when I talked to him, but that there's a 400-foot right-of-way on that highway. More of it's on the north side than the south side, but the actual from the shoulder of the road to the spot where the actual parking lots are, where there could have been construction, it's approximately 110 feet, with approximately 35, 40 feet that outlot or that right-of-way area, and then the remaining 60 feet is the state of Nebraska highway right-of-way along the highway for that exact spot.
Right. Okay, so you're appealing this one as a start. You're saying there's other corrections that need to be made throughout?
Right. I've already provided, I'm not appealing it, I've already provided amendment with the corrections to the city. And my proposal is to say, we want these correct, let's match them up with the book. I did it. If I made any little mistakes, just point to the page, let's fix it. Allow us to do that, because I think there's a lot of questions when you have 80% of the calculations found incorrect in some capacity, and that is on a multitude of things. It's either with the trip generation data in the book, using the correct data in the book based on the annex agreement, and then assuring that matches up with the buildings and the improvements on the properties with the calculation. And I gave a good example where I found the original construction plan did have 20 pumps on it for the gas station, which is Iger's gas station at 8600 Amber Hill Court, which is the Shell station, and then that got peeled back to 16 shortly thereafter to have a lower PM trip number, which there was no concern for traffic. You know, there's no traffic reason for try to give yourself a lower number. It would only be for a lower dues reason to do that. And I'm not, so, I mean, I wrote this in there, but the information is the information. I looked at it, this is the conclusion I made, and I'm just saying you have the data from the book, the use description, the trip data, and the description of the business for you to make a decision. So I'm actually asking for would be a condition approval for the special retail use, which was approved on the 19th of December letter. I'm just saying this trip calculation with that special use that was approved by the city is what I have on the sheet.
Okay. Other
It would result in
questions?
41.
Other questions?
I have one more.
Okay.
And so your contention is that it's specialty retail rather than a furniture designation?
Yeah, it's not a furniture store. It's more than a furniture store. Is it specialty retail? I didn't put specialty retail on the permit or on the amendment that came from Clark Anderson. I didn't put specialty retail on the approval of the city that came from the city. I just noticed that, hey, you have your approval with specialty retail, which is a common one that a lot of places fall into because there's a lot of things in this book that don't match up exactly for what a business is. So that's a very commonly used specialty use as far as the use category. So, and again, I'm saying I provided the information in the appeal, so I don't really have a whole lot to talk about. I'm just saying, here's from the website, this is what I looked at, this is the use, this is what the application was, specialty use. It didn't say warehouse and furniture store. That was on the trip table, and I've just made that clear that I'm just saying, hey, this is the way the rules are as I understand them.
Okay,
And this
other
is why
questions?
this conditional approval makes sense.
Other questions at all?
Staff.
No? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
your time.
You bet. Any other testimony in opposition? All right, seeing none, staff questions. Would anyone like to start?
Go ahead, Christie. Okay, the first question that I have is, what is our role from what we're doing today?
So your role is to determine whether the applicant's request to change the use designation for that one block to furniture store and warehouse should be approved. That's the question before you. I would submit to you that the other information about the rest of the table is beyond the scope of what you're asked to do here today. I want to mention a couple other things. Just first, that the letter being sent out to the other people in the use permitter who are affected by the table is done by ordinance. That's not done when the application comes in. It's when the approval is made, customary and according to ordinance. All of this discussion about the cost share and the CAM charges, the city is not a party to that agreement. The city did not require that agreement as part of any annexation agreement or unit, or use permit. The city has no control over private agreements among private parties, and I'd urge you to focus on what the city's role is in this, and I'm sure that Brian and the applicant will talk to you more about that.
And so, with that being said, the chart, is that a responsibility of the city or of the engineer? The
To-
information in the chart?
The applicant submits that revision to the city.
Mhm.
It's our job to take a look at it and determine, is it correct, appropriate, or not? Any changes, not just the table,
Mhm.
any changes on that site plan. It's up to us to review it and make a determination of whether, it's appropriate, should be approved or not. Right, so applicant puts it together, submits it, we take a look at it, we approved it.
The previous use was automotive care center,
Mm-hmm.
and the proposed change is specialty realty and warehouse.
Yeah, let me explain that.
Okay.
Okay? There are humans involved in this everywhere, and they make mistakes, and that's what was done in this case. So, the application, what's submitted to planning, an application fee and an application form, and a letter come in the door, okay? The plan is uploaded electronically. But this was the letter that was submitted with the application. It says specialty retail, okay? The site plan that was uploaded for us to look at is just the one that you see that says furniture store. Well,
Said what?
It says furniture store.
Furniture store. I mean, I was in the meetings leading up to this, and so I know that we were talking about furniture store and warehouse. There were other issues involved, building code, parking, et cetera. Okay, and so, so the letter you're seeing here, okay, specialty retail. So when I went to do the approval letter, okay, so I compounded that error, forgetting that the land use table on the plan said furniture store. And so the original letter that I wrote for the director's approval said specialty retail. Okay, well, I caught that error afterwards. There's no conspiracy, there's no, attempt to deceive. This was simple human error. Part of it was on my part. So this letter was issued January 2nd, okay, to correct that. And it says this revised letter is issued to correct the use type listed below from specialty retail to furniture store. So now the approval letter, that is just the text documentation of what's on the plan, matches the land use table on site plan, okay? So that's the explanation for how specialty retail came into this discussion. It was an error.
So it's furniture
Compounded
store
by-
and warehouse.
What's that?
Furniture store and
Furniture
warehouse.
store and warehouse, as it's shown on the site plan, correct.
And the city agrees with that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we approved that, and like I said, it was me then going back and looking at the letter when writing this one instead of the site plan, okay? So as with anyone, I would caution, you've got to remember that this special permit, this land use table, the information on it, primarily for the purpose of the city's use in zoning enforcement. So I caution anyone using a table like this one for the purpose of setting up my association and assessing CAM charges or anything else. Those are private agreements, okay? And understanding, like I said, the purpose of this is for zoning enforcement, the purpose of which is outlived its useful life here, we have suggested. The satisfaction of the terms of the annexation agreement, that letter was issued several years ago, and that's why we've been suggesting it's time to get rid of this. The multitude of amendments on a use permit like this, you've seen the site plan, the potential for error and oversight, they're just compounded with every amendment. It's not useful, it doesn't serve a purpose. We're suggesting it needs to go. And for the purpose of the city and zoning enforcement, it serves no purpose today.
So Brian, whose responsibility is it to move that forward to get rid of that table?
Well, the city, it's not something that we would really initiate. However, the applicant, Agricorp, they submitted an application today to do just that.
Okay.
That would go forward. That's going to go to Planning Commission. That's going to have public hearing. I would confirm that Mr. Fiala has submitted an administrative amendment to, in his terms, correct the land use table, make changes to the ITE information that's there. That's in play. I don't know the disposition of that. I don't know whether that's going to be approved by the director or denied or appealed or wind up back here. I don't know, but that is in play.
Other questions for staff? No? Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying our role.
And we have applicant rebuttal first.
My stuff's a mess. Sorry, my stuff is just all over.
Inner spot.
No.
Just a few points of clarification. You have the land use, and then you have the code identifications in the ITE manual. Often you take a retail use, and it's more specifically identified in that ITE manual. So for example, specialty retail, we use that in a lot of strip centers where you have multiple different types of retail uses. You might have the nail salon, you might have an office, you might have, we don't know specifically what those uses are going to be, so you call them out as a specialty retail center. If we have a business that has one particular use in the business, or excuse me, in the building, you're more able to more accurately identify the type of use and find the code that's most appropriate for it. So I think you can see, you know, a small strip shopping mall. This is not a small strip shopping mall. So I would submit the code that we were using was appropriate. I'm glad Abby clarified that the covenants are a private agreement. The table doesn't need to be on there for them to utilize what they need to under the association. They have private shopping center riders that are filed with each individual sale that talk about trips. So that's a total separate issue, has absolutely nothing to do really with this table. And again, the information we're talking about today is this one specific item. I'm not going to go into issues or classifications that Mr. Fiala may have used in his audit because we would be in disagreement on a lot of those based upon the actual methodology used in the traffic study and the appropriateness of which calculation for PM trips to be used. I think the methodology that was utilized today came from the traffic study. It's consistent with the methodology that we used in the past. It's appropriate for the use that Mr. Fiala is going to be using. It's, as you notice, it's kind of a unique use with its hours of operation and what it does. I think with that, I'd be happy to answer, you know, any other questions. I just don't want to stray from really what the issue at hand is today. And I think getting rid of the use table is just maybe supported by the potential confusion and disagreement there may be over that big table.
Questions for the applicant?
Yeah, but today, all we're talking about is the furniture and warehousing, not getting rid of tables, not doing anything.
No.
We're just talking
That
about.
will come at a later date. Today, it's just got you covered on that specific use, that line on the land use table.
Other questions for the applicant? or any of the applicants?
Right, anyone else on the applicant side?
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Commissioner Raymond Yost?
I would move we close public hearing on this item.
Second.
I'm sorry, sir. This is the order in which we go. We do not deviate. I apologize. You do not have the opportunity for rebuttal.
Who seconded that motion?
I'm sorry, who seconded that motion?
I did.
Commissioner Campbell?
Okay.
Jerry?
Okay, Albadre?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Beck, yes.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
There a motion on the main?
I would move approval of Administrative Amendment 19070.
Is there a second?
Second, Albadre.
Discussion?
Obviously, they are a furniture store, and they have basically the interior decorating approach to things where they will do the tiles or the counters or whatever else for a client. But it's not specialty retail to me. And I've gotten enough explanation from Brian on their error in the letter going back, and also in the original application from Tim Gergen, the comment there. That's been explained to me, and it's very understandable. As far as all the other stuff that Mr. Fiala has talked about, that's between the developer and the property owners. I will be supporting this.
Others?
I'll be supporting the motion. I do sympathize with the opponent of this application and encourage to bring his things to the front with the city, so continue down that path. I do think that the application that we have with Got You Covered is a furniture store that warehouses materials for installation. I think that that seems very appropriate for what we're doing today. And I do appreciate, though, the public forum that allows for people to have the opportunity to voice their concerns and bring things to the forefront. So thank you for doing that today, but I will be supporting what is in front of us at this time.
Anyone else? I too will support the motion. I think that the revisions were appropriate, that the planning director made an appropriate move here. And, you know, just for the curiosity of others, we are notified every week of approvals made by the planning director. I personally look at them, and I have never found an approval to be out of line with what Director Carey is allowed to do, and this follows suit there. Jerry, please call the roll.
Okay, this is for the approval of Administrative Amendment 19070. Albadre?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Beck, yes.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Okay. I don't know if we can get Commissioner Shear returned to the. Shams is leaving.
We will wait just one moment while Commissioner Shear joins us again.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to stop you. Bye-bye.
Okay, under continued public hearing and administrative action, we have item 5.1, special permit 450R to allow for the expansion to an existing non-residential healthcare facility with waivers on property generally located at 5401 South Street. The staff recommendation is conditional approval. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this item?
I see none.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting the site?
Also nothing.
Okay.
George.
George Wesselhoff, planning staff. So our location here, this is the Madonna campus, South Street on the north, South 56th Street on the east, Normal Boulevard to the south. So Madonna is proposing a special permit expansion that would include improvements, including a new 3-story building on the east side of their campus to the north of Glade Street, which will be a walkout building to match the existing south face. Currently, Madonna has 120 beds in the hospital. The proposed expansion will not be increasing the number of beds. The new hospital addition will be 48,000 square feet. The special permit area will be expanded by adding the residential building at the northwest corner of 56th and Glade Street. So the hospital expansion is here, kind of on the southeast part of their various buildings. They will be reconfiguring the parking and expanding the special permit area to include this house property at the northwest corner of 56th and Glade Street. I mentioned the parking and circulation. It's also proposed to move the South 56th Street entrance south and restrict traffic from turning left on North 56, and also consolidating the entrance points on South Street. As a condition of approval, a deviation request, which will include a traffic study, is required for the proposed 56th Street access relocation. There were 3 waivers requested. 2 of them pertain to setbacks for landscaping, for parking and drives in the front yard setbacks. There was a motion to amend that was submitted, and then a second motion to amend that was submitted this week, Monday, by the applicant's attorney, Tom Houston, which staff is in agreement with. And this motion pertains to 2 conditions of approval, the first of which, 1.8, relates to the South Street front yard setback, where the proposed language, which we agree with staff, is that the front yard setback can be reduced from 25 feet to 15 feet to accommodate additional parking, condition upon the applicant installing a double row of landscaping. So again, that would be along South Street. Kind of to the west, there's Cornhusker Bank at the corner here. It would be to the west of Cornhusker on the south side of South Street. And then the second condition, 1.9, pertains to Glade Street, basically from the southeast corner or near the southeast corner of the new building addition east to South 56th. And the proposal there that staff agrees with is to permit the Madonna drive and drive aisle within the 6-foot area of the property line, except that the 25-foot front yard setback would still be respected for the east 200 feet toward South 56th Street. So this would allow for vehicle access around the corner of their building, including emergency vehicle access. And so I can answer any questions you have at this time.
George, show me where the new entrance will be.
So there'll be, I'm on 56th Street.
The new building entrance.
Oh, the building will be here on the southeast side of their existing facilities.
No, but in the proposal, it mentions that they want to move or redo their entrance.
Yeah.
Is it going to be with the new building then, clear south?
No, the applicant can clarify, but I believe they're talking about the entrance here at South 56th Street.
I read it to read their main entrance to the building, which is further north by that circle.
Oh, yes, I apologize. They have a facilities entrance, and the applicant can clarify, but on the east part of their new building, I believe.
And it appears that the north entrance is now closed by this change.
The north entrance?
The northeast entrance. The north entrance is still there.
I would defer to the applicant on that. I'm not
Yeah.
quite sure about
Okay.
that.
Other questions for staff at this time? Okay. Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Mr. Houston.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Tom Houston. My address is 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1900 here in Lincoln, on behalf of Madonna Rehabilitation Hospital. With me today is Mike Monroe, who's General Counsel of Madonna, Daniel Grice, Vice President of Facilities, Nate Buss, Project Engineer, and also Darren Horst from Davis Design, Project Architect. This is a good thing. This will be easier than some of your other items on the agenda because this is a major expansion for Madonna and its renowned facility in the city of Lincoln. George is correct. This would add a 48,000 square foot addition to the building. You'll see the architectural rendering, and really what you see on the rendering is the new portion of the facility. This is probably a little more up to date site plan. The changes to the site plan that we're making as a part of the special permit are threefold. The addition of the building, which includes this new entryway, this portion of the building, along with the new tower, the new residential, the patient care facility, because this expansion is all about patient care. That's really the primary purpose of it. As George mentioned, it is not anticipated that the bed capacity of the facility is being expanded. It's really being moved elsewhere within the new addition to provide and deliver the patient care as best as possible. So the primary focus is the expansion of the building and then creating better traffic flow and circulation within the parking lot, because it is a large parking lot, and also having access on the adjacent arterial streets. The building itself, in addition to the entryway, we'll add the 3 stories for the patient care. It will add the southeast corner of the campus that has an existing house that will be really consumed and added to the site plan itself. The circulation along the major arterial streets, the current existing drive, I think, is approximately here. It will be relocated along with the physician's building. It will be relocated to one central access point off the South Street. And then likewise, the access onto 56th Street will be moved further to the south and restricted to right in, right out, because that is a very busy street and any left-turning maneuvers is virtually impossible at peak times at that location. The other thing that the site plan is updated about is really the patient parking, the parking lot itself. The parking required under the zoning ordinance is 599 stalls. This parking lot right now, as configured, contains 965 stalls. That's 160% of the capacity is required by the zoning ordinance, but that's based upon the experience and the needs of the patients and their families and the medical care community and the staff that work at Madonna. I handed out to you the motion to amend because the real issue, and we were scheduled to be in front of you 2 weeks ago, and we took the time to sit down with the planning department to talk about the waivers, because that was the issue that we had. We were trying to preserve parking, and we also were trying to make sure that we had internal circulation appropriate. And so we worked out a compromise that is embodied in the motion to amend that addresses both 1.8 and 1.9 as the site-specific conditions of approval. 1.8 is pretty simple. We're reducing the front yard from 25 down to 15 feet to retain 22 parking stalls at that location, which is important. And the waiver that pertains to 1.9 really is to allow the deliveries and the back-of-house activities, which really occur on the south face of this new building, we'll have truck circulation that will be able to go through the parking lot, and we needed to do that.
Can you zoom out a little bit and show us that again? I apologize. We're not quite seeing what you're pointing at.
Yeah. The language that you have in the motion to amend would permit this drive within the front yard setback. It's a front yard setback for Glade Street. And there are single-family homes, I think there's 6 maybe on the south side of Glade Street. One of the things that we're doing, if you're interested, we're retaining all of this screening. So we're keeping the screening for the drive, so it will not be an imposition or an aesthetic issue for the neighbors. But to address emergency vehicle access to the east side of the building and also truck traffic that will be making deliveries to the back of the house of the new facility, trucks will be able to make the maneuvers through the parking lot to get out back onto 56th Street. And that's what that waiver does, is 1.9 allows us to build the drive and the drive aisle within that front yard requirement, except for the easternmost 200 feet. We're reserving the front yard there and providing the protection to the single-family homes on the south. Madonna owns a few of them, but there are other owners there that we're trying to observe and protect also. So that's really the motion to amend. I'm glad that we sat down with the planning department, worked out those small differences that we had. This is a good thing for the city of Lincoln. The planned schedule is that construction would commence hopefully in April of this year, and it's probably about a 30 to 36 month construction process, so it's opening in 2023 is the plan. But this is all about the patient delivery and patient care for Madonna. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I have the full complement of the team here if you have ones that I cannot. Questions?
I have a quick question on that, let's see, the south side where your driveway is in the right-of-way. Will that retaining wall remain there?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And so the neighbors are used to having that
Correct.
retaining wall there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're able to retain those large yew bushes, and so we're not affecting the grade there, so the retaining wall. Yeah,
Everything?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Commissioner Finnegan, did you have a?
Yeah, Tom, you mentioned that there's not going to be an expansion of patients and rooms. Where are you moving them? I mean, what are you going to do with the extra space that?
It's going to really be consumed by other activities within the use, staff and other offices. Because a lot of them are double occupancy rooms, and in today's healthcare world, there's a demand for much more single occupancy rooms.
Sure.
And that's really why the new addition's being brought forward at this time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Scheer?
Just a kind of a associated question with the drive again. I'm just confused about this, but the new drive is within the property line.
Correct.
Okay, so here's my question. I've always been under the understanding that a drive can be within the setback, but it's just where a parking aisle, a parking lot can't be. Is that? And I think that's what your amendment says, but help me understand this.
You're asking a very esoteric question about the zoning.
I know, it's what I do. You know,
I'm not certain I know that.
Nate could probably answer this.
There is a unique provision in the parking provision pertaining to, and actually as it relates to, this is a healthcare facility, non-residential, that does have an additional prohibition about parking where it can be located. And I think that's really the issue that we confronted here.
Okay, I'm okay with it. I want to make sure I understand what why you're doing what you're doing.
It's the special permit requirements for a non-residential healthcare facility.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And Tom, there's a version of this drive aisle that exists today in the built environment, and this is simply an extension of that drive aisle. Am I correct? Because of the extension of the building.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay. Other questions for Tom?
I just have one other question. This might be a Nate question also. The children's outpatient building and associated parking lot is the only, well, the parking for that building is the only parking that is not connected internally to the rest of the parking. And I know that's always something that Nate would strive to do. Is there a reason for that? Is it because of space, or is that facility not so connected?
Let Nate address that.
Okay. To finish my question, is that facility not so connected to the other uses, but I mean, it'd be great if that parking lot could be connected, and I'd even go so far to say that if that driveway to 56th Street wasn't required, that'd be a great thing. So explain that a little bit to me.
You bet. Nate Bus, Olson, 601 P Street, Suite 200 here in Lincoln. Yeah, so you bring up a good point there. That grade change there's actually a pretty significant grade change. But there is a door that accesses onto the south of that building that a lot of staff is out on here, and then some staff is utilized in the back of the house as well. But yes, there is enough. We did actually look at that. I think even Madonna brought that up, and there would be a significant amount of work. We're also trying to preserve some of the work that they've done here already.
In the past, yeah. I gotcha.
So yes, there'd be a significant amount of grade change and work to do to make that connection.
Thanks.
Yep.
Dick?
Nate, on behalf of the planning commissioners, happy birthday.
Hey. So glad I can spend it with you guys today.
Anyone else?
I wish we had known.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, at this time, we will take any testimony in support. I see none. We'll take any testimony in opposition. I see none. Staff questions? Anyone? George, I think you're good. Tom, anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, very good.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Joy.
Jerry?
Okay. Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Beckius?
Yes.
Motion carried 8-0.
I would move that we
7.
approve special permit.
7-0, that is
Oh, I'm
correct. Sorry.
That's all right.
Special permit 450R.
As amended.
With the amendments.
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second, Campbell.
Discussion?
I have to admit, my dog was an angel dog at Madonna for years. And I can't tell you how pleased I am to be able to support an expansion of this wonderful facility in Lincoln. I've seen miracles happen there, so I can't tell you. It's just good to support it.
I will also be voting in support. 2 of my 3 children have had their lives changed by Madonna, and also Children's Hospital, which has the outpatient clinic. So I'm very familiar with that grade and how you have to pull into the parking lot and maneuver your way around. And over the course of the years we've been involved, the changes in the facility and where things are, and it is crowded, and I'm very excited to support this.
I also will be supporting this. Madonna's been a longtime member of this community, and to see them continue to improve their facilities is excellent.
I'm going to support it too. I really appreciate the fact that you, architects and engineers, and Madonna as the owner, have remained committed to this site. I think this site is a really important site for this kind of use, and I'm sure that you've probably thought about it'd be a lot easier if we just moved it somewhere else in the city. But I just really appreciate the effort that you put into making it work here. It's a great thing.
I'll also be in support and concur with my fellow commissioners on their statements. And I think you've done a great job protecting the neighbors with landscaping and continuing to uphold what you've done on the site. And it seems like a no-brainer there.
I too will support the motion. I find that the expansion at this site has been very well, delicately weighed with the existing neighborhood around it. I think that the waivers are not out of line, especially considering that this use has been in place for a number of years and is not changing in a significant manner. One thing that I did not agree with in the staff report was I don't concur that with the argument that the number of parking spaces exceeding what's required by code is relevant to an applicant. We've, the planning department, we have seen some changes in some other zoning residential, or excuse me, other zoning districts that are more market-based parking approaches rather than numbers-based. And so there was an argument made in the planning document that said that I just don't find that argument particularly relevant. So, Jerry.
Okay, this is for the conditional approval of special permit 450R as amended as offered by the applicant and agreed upon by staff. Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Beck, yes.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
All right. At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. Seeing none, I'll call for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second, Campbell?
Edgerton and Campbell.
Okay. Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Finnegan?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Beck, yes.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
We are adjourned. Thank you.